Thank you. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. It says Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. This happened historically, but it happens continuously. And I've talked to you about this before, because where the Lord lives properly is within us. We are the vessels, we are the temple of the Lord. And what he comes to find is the wildness, the wilderness, the wildness and the soul of man. Because you see, the body and the soul, they are inclined toward evil. The spirit, which we have by the Spirit of life that God breathed into us, it's a very gentle spirit. And it does not shout down the body. It does not shout down the soul. It reminds us. I had a person who yesterday confessed a terrible sin. One of the most terrible sins human beings can commit. And, you know, I said to this person, did you enjoy the sin? Did you enjoy the sin? And the person said, yes. And I said, how long? And they said, while it was occurring. And what about afterward? The conscience began to scroll past all of the things that it had ever been told by the Spirit of God. You have a personality. Your personality has, as anyone will tell you, all of the kinds of pulls on it. Like for example, when we stand up in church and our feet hurt, or maybe our back hurts, or maybe our attention begins to drift, and we have to control that. The body fights against that. And when you see the little kids running around, it's because they haven't yet learned how to do that. And even older people have not learned how to do that properly, so that when they are in church, it is a great effort. It shouldn't be. And not just because it's church. I remember way back when I was in high school, in 1964, our team won CIF. That's a big deal if you follow, you know, high school football, to win CIF, to win the whole deal. Well, one of the games that we played was against Loyola. I don't know if you know Loyola in Los Angeles, but the entire, it's an all-male school. And the entire student body stands up throughout the game. The same way that you find the midshipmen for the Navy and for the Army, they will stand up through the whole game to watch their team, because they are one with them. They don't sit down. They may have a drink or they may have a hot dog, but they don't sit down. No one sits down. And this is a football game. And it's hard to stand up when your team is getting beat. It's really hard when you know, in the last quarter, you're not going to, because, you've only scored 3 points up till now. You're not going to score another 14 in the last, few minutes. To stand up and to continue. It requires focus. It requires the integrity of the first idea. The integrity of man's first idea, because he has the Spirit of God, is to be with God. It is the first idea, to be with God. But then the impingement comes. It says that Jesus Christ was in the wilderness for 40 days, and then afterward he hungered, after 40 days. The first inclination of one who has been baptized and who has God and has the Spirit of God and has a relationship with God, the first spirit is the inclination to do God's will. But then the calculating spirit of the mind, or the ideas that come, oh, here's a bag with $50,000, in unmarked bills. And they're not all hundreds, and the bag is a paper bag, or let's say a plastic bag. I should turn this in. I could use this. What could I buy with this? You know, I know exactly how I'm going to use this. And that's how the process begins to degrade. The first inclination is the correct one. Somebody lost it. Someone needs this. I'll tell you what I've done. I've never told this story before, but it's absolutely true. I guess I was in my early 20s. And I went to use a payphone. I mean, that will really tell you how long ago this was. What's a payphone? In a phone booth, you know, like Superman. I went inside and there was a purse, a small purse, a change purse. Looked sort of like the change purse that my grandmother had. And it had some change in it and a few dollars. Less than $10. I took it. I have never forgotten that. I will never forget that. It bothers me. If I could pay the person back today 10 times whatever that amount of money is in today's money, because back then it was worth a lot more than it is today, I'd pay it. Just to have my soul rid of this. But I did it. And I thought at the time, you know, haha, look at this. I mean, for a couple of bucks, you know, you could get a double-double and a Coke. Things were cheap back in those days. But since then, I've thought about an old person, crippled with arthritis, coming in, needing help, didn't have much money. I stole their money. Maybe they didn't eat. Maybe they got nervous. Maybe anything. They had to be old, because why would they forget their purse? They had to be senile. Look what I did. I have been rapacious. I've stolen. You know, I just felt like, well, in those days my first inclination was always towards self. It was always towards self. I had not been baptized. I had not heard the Word of God the way that I should have. And I felt like this was serendipity. Aha, my good luck. I kicked over a rock and I found a diamond. Well, let me tell you something. The only thing that you can find on earth, the only thing, this is a principle. No one can argue against this principle. The only thing you can find on earth is something God has made. If it is made by man or has the touch of man, you're stealing it. You leave it right where it is, or you give it to some authority that you can trust to give it to whomever is looking for it. But if it has the imprint of man, you cannot find this wire mesh screen. You see this wire mesh screen? God didn't make that. Man made that. Okay? It's free. You find a raw diamond, it's yours. You find a big gold nugget, well, if it's not in somebody else's mine. You know, I mean, if it's just in, you know, out there like in your backyard. If you find oil underneath your property, it's yours. But if you find something else, like a big gold coin, you can't find that. You're just stealing it. Because you don't know who the owner is, it doesn't give you permission to become the new owner. You have to give it to somebody, and of course we have a basic law, you know it. If you give it to the authorities and nobody comes to claim it after 30 days, then, you know, it basically it goes to you. But I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I also committed another theft that I'm very much ashamed of. I stole from a little store next to my elementary school in 6th grade, and every day I went to school I would palm a bubble gum or something like that with these two fingers, and I would hold another bubble gum like this. I'm showing you a technique, Jaden. This is when they had penny candy. They don't have penny candy any longer, but they used to have penny candy, and I would take one and I would hold one and I'd give him my penny. Pretty clever sleight of hand, right, for an 11-year-old. I went back to that store as an adult. Of course, the owner was dead. So You know, and I remembered who the owner was, because I look at him right in the eye every day, and I was sure my friends did it too, because I shared the technique. But I feel bad to this day for having done that. I did a terrible thing. You know, I was looking out. I was looking out for nothing more principled than my own appetite. So when God said he was in the wilderness, the devil tempted him with the things that all beset us. And that the wildness, the wilderness of our soul still tempts God with when he comes into us. When God is with us, he has to bear the way in which we look at things, the way we lust for power. God said, all these things I'm going to give you. I'll take you up onto the pinnacle. I'll give you all these things. Just bow down and worship me. How many times have we found one of our politicians bowing down to big moneyed interests? We finally find out that our local mayor has been in bed with AEG, and for 3 years they've been plotting to have a stadium built, and it's all been on the hush-hush, but somebody got a memo. And now in a time when they have to lay off people and everybody is worried about cutbacks and we don't have any money, they've got $170 billion that they're going to raise to be floated in bonds for the building of this football stadium. Villaraigosa. You know, he's a prostitute of the first order. And most politicians get in bed with big moneyed interests because they achieve power. You know, Fidel Castro would have rather been the head of a miserably poor country than to give in and to democratize his people and then have all the money that would have flowed into his country from the United States as Cuba became one of the great tourist resorts, as it was when Fulgencio Batista was president, before Castro took over. Power, the lust for power. You see? The other lust, besides the bodily lust for food, which might also be for sex or drugs or anything like this, or even, you know, we don't think of it sometimes, but laziness, slothfulness, lassitude, laggardliness. All these descriptive terms describe somebody that does not want to get up off of his rear end and pull his share of weight in society. There are so many people that are pointing fingers. You look at this. This is light a candle. Light a candle, and the world will not be so dark. But don't curse the blackness of night if you're not willing to strike a match. Don't do that kind of thing. So sometimes when we talk about let these stones be made bread, what was the lust that was there? To satisfy the body. Well, sometimes people just want to be lazy. Sometimes they want luxury. Sometimes they want the pleasure of many different partners. Sometimes they want alcohol or drugs, or you know. The middle one was the worst one of all. It's the challenge that we make to ourselves, that society makes to us, and that the devil continues to repeat constantly. Why do you have faith in a God you can't see? Why do you have faith in children's stories? How can you know, if there's God, show him to me, demonstrate him to me, make him manifest before me. I don't know, Christopher Hitchens. Christopher Hitchens is a great, I say great meaning large, meaning popular atheist. He's from England. He's written many books on the subject. You know, this is what it means to be an iconoclast. Somebody who tilts at windmills like Don Quixote from Cervantes' novel of the same name. A person stands up for something and then people come along and chip away at it. The person who chips away at the thing that's standing up as the great statue, he gets as much fame almost as the person that built the statue. So Hitchens, well, he's now got cancer. He's had cancer for over a year. It's killing him. And he was interviewed. He said, I'm still putting my faith in medicine to solve this problem with my health. He said, but I'm open to other things. I bet he is. I bet he's looking for the miracle that we always talk about. But why would God do this? Because he could turn around in the next second, Hitchens, and say, you know, I attribute it to something other than what you attribute it to. God is going to wait. He's going to wait. And he's going to speak. And there's going to be a time where maybe Hitchens himself cannot speak verbally, but he will speak to his soul. And God will speak, and he will keep saying the same words over and over, as he says to every unrepentant sinner. Come to me, my son, here I am. Come to me, my son, here I am. And the son that does not come is the one that won't be saved. Not because the Lord doesn't call. You know the picture of the Lord, it's very famous, knocking on the door? He can go through the door. There is no lock that he can, there's no wall that he cannot penetrate. Why is he knocking? Because, what does it say in Psalm 115? What shall I do for all that the Lord has done for me? What will I do? All that the Lord has done for me, what will I do? I will take the cup of salvation. What does it mean? I will accept the Lord and his sacrifice. I will accept what he has done for me. So when you come to this situation where, you know, he is saying, throw yourself down from the pinnacle of the temple. Throw yourself down. Because it's written that the angels have charge over you, lest at any time you would dash your foot against a stone. He said, test God. Test God. Test God. Test him. Well, St. James in his epistle has written the answer to that. Let no man say at any time that he is tempted by God. For God does not tempt, neither is he tempted. You cannot say to God, Moses, when he asked the Lord, who shall I say has sent me? When he was going to speak to the people that had turned completely rebellious and idolatrous after he went up on the mountain after the 10 Commandments had been broken. He said, tell them I am. And he said, what shall I give as a sign? Put your hand in your coat and draw your hand out and it will be leprous. Put your hand back in your coat and take it out and it will be pure. That will be the sign. So, always this challenge that comes to us from many things. I misspoke, and I want to correct myself before anybody thinks it, because this is being taped. It was not after the 10 Commandments had been broken. The 10 Commandments were broken after that. But when Moses came down from the mountain, it's what I meant to have said. But I want you, in any case, to look at your own lives and say, because I've heard it from some of you who have confessed, God doesn't listen to me. God doesn't hear my prayer. These are all temptations. You're tempting God, and the devil has tempted you, and now you've gone so far that in your own mind you've agreed with the devil. Do not lay it to God's feet if something is occurring in your life that you do not like. You do not know the end of the thing that has happened to you. How would you like to have been St. Paul? Most of us think St. Paul was great. But what happened to him in his life? He lost his entire family. He lost his entire family. He went to his own people and tried to preach to them. They wouldn't receive any word that he said. So he said, from now on I am the apostle to the Gentiles. Number 2, how many times was he beaten by the Romans? How many times was he in fasting and hungry? Anything that he had, he made while preaching the gospel and working as a tent maker. He was bitten by a serpent. He was shipwrecked and spent a day and a night in the deep. Would you like to have had all these things happen to you that happened to St. Paul? And would you then say, where is God in my life? Well, where was God in his life? In the same place where God should be in yours, inside, and comforting you by saying, my son, you don't know the end or the conclusion to these matters, but when they are finished, you will have your reward. Do not lay treasure up on earth where the moth corrupts, where rust eats away, where people can steal after having broken in. No, lay your treasure up in heaven where it is safe and where there is surety and where you will receive not just what is yours, but yours with interest. So these are man's temptations. We tempt God continuously in the wildness of our own soul. It happened historically. It will continue long after we are dead. The Lord bears with this because He loves us. Let us love Him in return as we pray in the Eucharistic liturgy. Glory be to His name.